They don't have COVID, but they have a stomach flu, so they thought it'd be best if they didn't come. And I've been asked by Turning Point USA to inform you all that we would really appreciate if you wore your masks. We know, we believe me, Turning Point and this chapter do not support it in any way. We don't think they're necessary, especially if students are vaccinated. But, you know, we're very grateful for Eastern for allowing us to speak here today. Excuse me. To speak here today. So we just really appreciate if you did that, because that's how we can get more speakers here, people who have a bigger political impact on our society and stuff like that. And hopefully we can find venues where these aren't required. So help us stay as a chapter here and just put them on for just for a little while. And then when you're all done, you can take them off. So that's my spiel there. And so we're very grateful for Ms. Mcquiston to come speak, and Commissioner Beveridge. I reached out very with little time. They were both very kind in coming to speak here today. So please help me welcome Carrie Mcquiston and Donna Beveridge.
Thanks, Isaac. Welcome. Excited to see people's faces and see people in person again. We've been doing Zoom meetings for a year and a half to 2 years. Kind of getting tired of that, so I'm happy for that. I want to thank EOU. We appreciate it, and Turning Point USA. Excited that some young people in Union County have started the Turning Point USA. It's really important, and it sounds like there's several people on board, and they found a professor to help them, and so we're excited for that. Good job, you guys. Proud of you. I want to kind of start out. We just had Veterans Day, so I just want to start out by saying another thank you to our veterans. I don't think we would be sitting here if it wasn't for those veterans that lost their lives through the years and that are fighting for us now. So I just thankful to live in the USA and thankful for the sacrifice of our veterans tonight. The next thing I want to say is, before I start, is one of the frustrations as a county commissioner is the mandates that are brought down from state or federal government that are one size fits all. That is not how it works. And that's why we started the Eastern Oregon County Association. So there's 15 counties on the east side. A couple of them are actually more west. And we believe that we're stronger together. So we work together on issues and policies that we feel are unnecessary or necessary for our area, but we work together to try to get those done. We meet every month or more often during legislative time to work for you guys. We want to hear what you have to say tonight. I'll just talk for a few minutes and let you guys ask questions, because I think that's really why we're here, to be able to answer questions for you guys. I'm just going to review I put goals together every year. This is my 5th year as commissioner. So I'm a farmer and rancher, and so I know how important agriculture is in Union County. But one of my first goals for this year was the county owns the Ball Industrial Park, and one of my jobs as a commissioner is for job retention, business retention, helping businesses that need it, whatever it is. And so I'm excited to say that 5 years ago when I became commissioner, we were just certifying the park. We had just finished putting the utilities in, and we kind of got a slow start. But as of the last week, we have sold every lot in that 60-acre business park. So even though the economy's been bad for some people during COVID, for other people it's taken off. And so all the businesses except for one have been Union County businesses that needed to expand. And if a business comes to me, and even if they're going to expand 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 good paying jobs, how can we help you? We're a small county, only 26,000 people, so every job counts. And we have one company that came here from Idaho and moved in. And my first question was, why are you moving from Idaho to Oregon? But they said they wanted to retire here. They love how beautiful it is here. And so they brought their business with them. They've been in business for 25 years. So we were excited to have them. So they moved out there also. So that's one of my goals for this year, was to fill it up. I was actually hoping to sell 2 lots, but ended up selling 4 and selling it out. So exceeded the goal for that this year. The second one was to complete a natural resource plan for Union County regarding federal land. What I learned when I first became commissioner from going to Washington, D.C. is if we don't have a plan about what we care about in our county, then when the federal government comes in and wants to take a piece of land and change what they do with it, if we don't have a plan, then we don't have a say. So I've been actually working on this for 4.5 years. We finally just approved it last week. And it's basically talking about what we care about here in Union County. We had a group, a committee with all different interests that met together. We had everybody from a farmer to the ODFW to an environmental person. We had about 7 people on our committee. So we've been working 4.5 years. We finally got that passed. So now, if they come in and want to change something on the federal land, we know that we don't have jurisdiction over that. But now that we have a plan, they have to look at what we care about and consider it before they just impose something on us. So after explaining that, I'll tell you that there is something that's been trying to be imposed on us. And it's the Wild and Scenic River, the River Democracy Act, which would affect 86,000 acres in Union County and almost 500,000 in Wallowa County. And we haven't been at the table. There's been no studies done on why it needs to be done. Many of the rivers aren't even rivers. Only 15% of them are actually rivers. Some of them are mudpuddles. And it encompasses a 1/2 mile on each side of those rivers. We asked for the map several times. We were never given a map, so we didn't even know what they were proposing. So the 15 counties right now and a couple of our representatives and senators are working with us to fight this and stop it. And if something needs to be designated wild and scenic, then start fresh, do it right, let us be at the table, do the studies, tell us why it needs to be changed. Because if it doesn't need to be changed, don't just come in and take over. We don't need more government regulation. I'm the government. I don't want to regulate you guys if I don't have. You know what I'm saying? That's not our job. And so we're fighting that right now. So we did get that natural resource plan done, which I'm very thankful for. Another thing I'm working on is called place-based planning. So it's for the Upper Grand Ronde Basin, and we've been working on that also since I first became commissioner. So 4.5 years, we just finished it. And we had about 25 people at the table, agriculture, cities, fish people, wildlife people, and working on a plan for our water needs in Union County. And so now we just finished that. We're going to have to take it to Oregon Water Resources. By the way, they're the ones that funded it. They gave us the money. We were a pilot program in Union County as the first one to finish it. So they would always ask us, what do you see as success after this 4.5 year plan? And I said, success is that we actually implement something at the end. Nobody wants to go to meetings for 4.5 years just for the fun of it or to set it on the shelf. We need to implement what we decide to plan locally. So at the top of our list is some kind of storage. And we're seeing that because you'll see that like right now it's really dry, but in the spring a lot of times we have flooding. So if we could have storage like most other counties in Oregon, we can help the fish, we can help the farmer, we can help the cities, and that's, so we have, we did get some money and we're working on a storage feasibility study right now for Union County. So I'm excited about that. And then my 4th goal for this year was Buffalo Peak Golf Course to increase membership and revenue. And I can tell you, I'm pretty excited about that too. Buffalo Peak just got named best golf facility in all of Oregon last week. We have a manager that is just, I can't even say enough good about him, but we have tripled the people that are coming there, and the income and what's going on at Buffalo Peak in a 1.5 years. So, and I give it all the credit to the great staff out there. So I just want to say, not every year do you have every goal, but this year was pretty good. Now, there's one goal that I didn't have on here, and obviously that's COVID. And, you know, that affects everything. You know, sometimes you have a goal or you have things that happen and something comes up that you weren't planning. So COVID has been devastating. It's been devastating to a lot of families. Most of you know somebody that's either gotten very sick from it or passed. And I am not the liaison to public health, that is Commissioner Scarpo, but because we're each liaisons to different things, we each have about 15 boards we're on because we can't do everything. But I do know that it's been very difficult these last few years because nobody knows what the future is. Nobody knows, you know, what's going to happen tomorrow. But I do know there's a fine line between being free and not being fearful and being safe. And of course, if there's a sickness, if I'm sick tonight, I guarantee you I wouldn't have come to this because I don't want to spread it to you guys. So there's just that fine line, and I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but at the same time, we don't want to live in fear, and we don't want every business to go down just because we're all staying home because we're scared. So there's just that fine line, and it's not one that anybody has the perfect answer to, but it's certainly one that your commissioners have been working on every day and doing the best we can to protect you guys, but yet protect your freedom also. So that is all I'm going to say because I don't think you guys want to hear a 50-year speech, and I'm going to take questions. Did you want her to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I will introduce Carrie Mcquiston, and she is the mayor of Baker, and she's running for governor.
Hey, you can hear me with that, everyone?
Yeah.
Excellent. So good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Mcquiston, and as she said, I am currently the mayor of Baker City, and I am a Republican candidate for governor. So very happy to be here. I would like to thank Isaac and Turning Point USA for organizing this. So you give him a round of applause. Really wonderful. And this event is near and dear to my heart because I registered to vote as a Republican on my 18th birthday. Right on that day, happy birthday to me. And then I also became a PCP, a precinct committee person for the Baker County Republicans when I was 18 years old. So I got involved very early. That led to a pretty good education of our political system here in Oregon. And I encourage you to please do that now at this age at a college level, because you are our future. I look ahead and I realize 10, 20, 30 years from now, you folks are going to be in control here. So I want you to be as educated as possible. So I have at this point been on speaking engagements, meet and greets, things like that, and I think just almost every county around the state. And I just have to say that this is the first venue in any county, including Multnomah, Lane, Marion counties, that I've been in a speaking engagement where we have a mask protocol trying to be implemented. And how sad is that happened here in Eastern Oregon? It's not how we're at a bit, we're talking about freedom, and that's what we hear at the beginning. So anyway, what people want to know during one of these speeches is, who the heck are you and why are you running? Just the basics, right? And I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, I think, so we can have a lot of question and answer time at the end. So my name is Carrie Mcquiston. I am a 7th generation Oregonian. I was born and raised in Oregon. I was actually raised on a cattle ranch just south of Baker City in Bridgeport. So as far as natural resources go, those were in my backyard all through childhood and now. So they're not a mystery, I understand. I graduated from high school at Baker High School, went to Burt River High School, or Burt River School. That was kindergarten through senior year, up until I think through my freshman year before I moved to Baker. Then I ended up graduating with an emphasis in international relations from Willamette University in Salem. So I lived over on the other side of the state for several years. I get the entire state. In my 20s, I lived away, like a lot of folks over here do. I ended up going to the University of Madrid for a semester, so I lived in Spain for a while. Then I ended up getting a job just outside of Tokyo, so I lived in Japan for a while. I was there also. I came back, went up to the Seattle area, and that's when I started working my way up the corporate ladder. And I ended up, after several years, in a corporate vice presidency, handling business development, public relations, advertising, things like that, for an international engineering firm. And I kind of did what most people in this area do at a certain point. When I was right around 30 years old, I decided it was time to come home. And I remember I had this little black Mustang Cobra, and I was really excited about this car, but I could not get it out of second gear in Seattle traffic. So that was the breaking point. I moved back home. But as soon as I got back to Baker City, I realized that the skill set I brought with me didn't necessarily lend itself to any company in Baker City. So in 2007, I started my own publishing company, Black Lion Publishing. I built that from literally the ground up. And that's an industry where, companies fold within about 4 years usually, and mine didn't. It's still paying the bills to this day. So I'm also a small business owner. I get what it's like to put up with these fees and these restrictions that the state puts on small businesses. It's death by 1,000 cuts, and I absolutely understand that. Now, I didn't plan to run for office 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And honestly, I would not have been ready. I wouldn't have been in a position to. But I had to stand up in 2020 when everything started falling apart and Baker City Hall had been locked down. You couldn't even walk in and pay your bills. We had a very left-leaning city manager, mayor, county city council, and we ran, I think 13 candidates ran that fall. And I ended up getting the most votes. I was elected mayor the first meeting. And then things really started to change. First thing we did was open our doors at City Hall. And we had in-person meetings, and people could come again into City Hall and pay their bills in person, get representation in person. You hadn't seen that across the state. The next thing that happened, and this is very cool because our business community stepped forward. And they stepped forward to work with us, saying, what can you do to help? And one of those folks came up with an idea of why can't we call ourselves a common sense sanctuary city? And it was a great idea, but it didn't have quite enough teeth. So we ended up holding hearings and we had public meetings. And basically what they were asking us to do was declare a crisis in our city. And that's exactly what we did. We declared a criminal, a crime, mental health, and economic crisis due to Kate Brown's mandates on us, the lockdowns and the restrictions, because they were affecting us far more than COVID was over there at the time. The week that I was actually sworn into office, we had 3 young men 3 days in a row commit suicide. It's not something that typically happens over there. I had people, friends, every week reaching out saying, I am at my max with anxiety and with stress and with depression because of these mandates pitting people against each other. It's too much. We ended up passing that resolution. And one of the reasons behind the resolution was if we could put enough national pressure on Kate Brown, we were hoping that she would release those restrictions at least a little bit. And it did, it worked. It was combined with a letter signed by several county commissioners that went in almost at the same time as that resolution was passed. Then we had some sports teams on the west side of the states really protest this. And she did, I think, within 3 days, back down on her extreme lockdown rating. So I think she was dogpiled, frankly. But then it kind of died out, the resolution. It didn't get the kind of attention that we were hoping at first. And so at that point, I took my 10-year-old daughter on a road trip. And we went through Idaho, we went across the Dakotas, we went back up Wyoming, Montana, and then back. And let me tell you, as soon as you get across the Oregon border, things are different. They are not like it is here in Oregon and these other states. And the more I traveled, the more I realized it felt, say in South Dakota, just like it did when I was growing up here in Oregon. They are free. They know that weird does not work. They aren't pretending that it does over there. And I was in fight or flight mode, truth be told, and sitting there in South Dakota wondering what to do. And I was looking for some kind of sign. And when I got back to Oregon, some amazing things happened almost immediately. And one of those things was PJ Media, a journalist named Jeff Reynolds actually picked up our story and ran it, and it grew regionally and started trending nationwide at #1. Baker City enacts common sense sanctuary resolution. And after that, Glenn Beck and the Blaze picked it up, and that's when it went national. A day or so later, I'm sitting there at the office in my publishing company, and my daughter comes running up with my phone, and I'm seeing a New York City number. And on the screen, it is Pete Hegseth and his team saying, would you want to come on Fox? He was actually hosting Fox Primetime that week. And it was an amazing situation and kind of out of my comfort zone because they offered up a limo to come pick me up in Baker. I declined. I'm an independent sort, I like to drive, so I did that myself. I couldn't escape the makeup artist in Boise, but I got there to the studio, and that went nationwide. And then a day or two later, Stuart Varney with Fox Business did the same thing, and I ended up there. And then several of these Portland news channels picked it up, and I was there. And it just started to steamroll. The first call that we got at City Hall, I believe, was from New Jersey. And the calls and the emails started rolling backwards through the time zones across the state. And then when they hit Oregon, the tone changed and it became people from all corners of Oregon. And the interesting part was these were not just hardcore conservative Republicans. I was starting to hear from hardcore lifelong Democrats who said they had voted for Kate Brown and wouldn't do it again. They were understanding that what I was trying to stand up and fight for were our constitutional rights. And those don't just apply to conservatives. They apply to every political party across the board. These are our rights that we're fighting for. And it was absolutely amazing. And so after 2 months of being asked to run for governor, I started finally paying attention, and then I did it. So that's kind of how it came about. It was a natural grassroots movement. This has made me think, this entire process, quite a bit about our Constitution. And our founding fathers, they differed on a few things here and there, religious disagreements also. But when you look back, they believed that these were inherent God-given rights that were spelled out for our protection in the Constitution. That means we're born with them. The government does not give these rights to us. These are our inherent rights just by virtue of being born that we're trying to protect. We're seeing that now being eroded. And I believe this is a spiritual war. I believe that this is good versus evil. And I believe that when we see socialism and communism start to take root, instead of our constitutional republic, that's the way by which socialism and communism spread out widely in a society through politics. That's what we need to stop right now. I look back and I feel like we're the frogs in the pot of boiling water. You've heard that metaphor, right? That's exactly what we are right now. The water has been turned up to boiling point over the years so slowly that we're almost there. And I can guarantee if we had looked back 50 years ago, this would not be happening. No one would have put up with it. No one would have complied with this. Kate Brown would not have gotten away with it. But look where we are now with that water turned up. I say almost. I think we're almost at the boiling point, but I don't think we're there yet. I believe that we have this election right now to change things. I absolutely believe that. But we're not going to do it by doing the same thing we've always done in Oregon. We can't have another slick I-5 corridor politician coming in to Oregon to the governor's office. It's just not going to work for people. We need someone like myself. I will uphold our Second Amendment rights because I get that they have nothing to do with hunting. They are to fend off a tyrannical government. That's what they're there for. They support our First Amendment rights, which you're also seeing eroded at this point. We need to protect those. We need to have the money follow the kids in school, right? Yeah. So that parents have control. We've got to put that back with the parents. We are not terrorists because we refuse to comply with a tyrannical government, right? Because we refuse to co-parent with them. Right. Not going to happen. Catastrophic wildfires. I think probably everyone in this room knows that fuel load and unmanaged fires were what caused these fires, right? But we almost had one on our family ranch this summer. And I came back just in time to look, I think it was even the New York Times and New Yorker. And our governor had given an interview citing racial inequity with fighting wildfires. That makes no sense whatsoever. It's like logic has been turned completely upside down. Homelessness, that is another huge issue that is spreading across the state. And as mayor, I'm dealing with that right now. We all are at city council, our city attorney, our city manager, because this is springing from really poor failed legislation over in Salem. I'll give you an example. So right now, if our police want to come break up a homeless camp, then they have to give 24 hours notice, and we have to store the materials, the personal belongings of those folks for 30 days at our expense. That's minor. That's minor compared to what's happening now. This last law has basically created a two-class system, homeless and not homeless. And if they feel it's objectively reasonable to do pretty much whatever they want on city property, we have no legal recourse against that. So say someone who's homeless wants to come and camp in the middle of City Hall, and they think it's reasonable, and we think it's 5 o'clock and it's reasonable to shut the doors and turn off the lights, they can sue us. We will lose. That has to change, obviously. Mental health services for these folks, they're not in place. I get that, and they need to be. Oregon has the greatest demand in the country for mental health services and the least amount of services available. So that's interesting, and that probably contributes to the problem also. Police support. We should not be defunding our police. We need to support them. But this is the interesting part. This is twofold. We're not prosecuting, especially in Portland, when these folks are arrested. It's a catch and release system. Kate Brown had the ability through statute this entire time to go over the head and bypass the district attorney of Multnomah County and prosecute through the Attorney General's office. And that was never, ever done. It could be very easily. Actually, I'm up against another candidate who, instead of using that, what seems to be a very simple solution to me, that candidate wants to federalize our police. Yes, and he's running on the Republican ticket. So please do your research. I mean, there are so many other issues across the state. I have some rat cards out there in the hall that list out probably 10 of them that I've identified from the beginning. But the number one thing I would like to leave you with, number one thing I hear in all of the rural counties all around the state, and it's not just Eastern Oregon, it's every rural county on every corner of the state. They all feel like we do here in Eastern Oregon. And that is that our voices don't count and our votes don't count. Certainly we have some voter integrity issues that we need to deal with. Voter, mail-in balloting, and some computer issues that I keep hearing about from Multnomah County especially. But your voice does count and your vote does count. I promise you over here that it does. I can think of one gubernatorial election that happened where if voters just did CD2, Congressional District 2, which is what we're in the middle of over here, if the Republicans had turned in their ballots, Dennis Richardson would have been governor. It wasn't the left side that took it. It was not turning in ballots, in my opinion. So we need to do that here, and we can do that here. Imagine if you had a governor from Baker City, from Eastern Oregon, who actually got the entire state, what we could do. And I'm very optimistic about that because if CD2 turns in their ballots, and then I keep getting these non-affiliateds and Democrats and people who are just done. They're saying that their own party, their Democrat party, has left them so far to the left, that they're left behind. With that combination, we can take this in the fall. We can take it in the primary, and we can take it in the general. So, thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you being here. So up next, we have the Q&A session. If anyone has a question, feel free to come up to the stand. We'll get the microphone connected, or you might not even need it pretty close. So we'll try to keep it, mildly peaceful here. No need to shout or scream. It's a small room. But if there's anyone who has a question for these other ladies, is there anyone?
I think I can project quite well. Good evening, Donna. Who are the representatives that are helping you with the water stuff you mentioned? Can you name us?
Absolutely, yeah, Representative Levy from our district, Representative Owens, and Senator Brady have all signed on to our letter against the river homes. And I believe there might be one or two more, but those are the three local ones that are sort of Bentley, Owens, and Brady. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
I have a question. Mayor Mcquiston, Oregon hasn't had a governor from this side of the state for so many years, and mostly that is due to Portland, having a major population, all that stuff. What are your campaign goals, and kind of how are you navigating through that kind of barrier that Republicans have, especially on this side of the state, to getting to that office?
Maybe I should tell you. I don't think my voice carries to the back row without it, but we haven't had a Republican governor from Eastern Oregon since Elmo Smith in the 1950s. Yes, and he served, I think he was appointed and served about 2 years, and then he lost and he went up for re-election. So yeah, that's been an awful long time ago. Just in terms of Republicans in general, it's been 39, almost 40 years. And there's never been a female Republican in the governor's seat. So those are all interesting historical tidbits there that I'm hoping to break. But a lot of that is we haven't had a strong, viable candidate step forward from Eastern Oregon. Why haven't we? I am not feeling or finding this barrier that people talk about when I go to the other counties across the state. I am getting a hugely warm reception all across the state. I can be in Northwest or Southwest Oregon, and those folks are saying, yes, we need a governor from over here because there's some common sense left, which is huge to me. I just did an event in Multnomah County, and I had the same response. So, I mean, the support is out there, and we're at a beautiful time to take this election, I think, because Kate Brown's approval rating is, I think it's below 30% at this point, even with her own people. And we're looking at somebody else coming forward on the Democrat side, who, gosh, we've got one guy who's funded by Melinda Gates Foundation, Angelina Jolie. The guy voted last year in New York. So he's a hardcore Democrat, works for the New York Times, and I'm not even sure how this individual qualifies to run in Oregon. So we need to answer those questions, I think. But we've got those, and we've got. Yes, he does. He has a physical address over there, but he physically voted in New York State. So that's the interesting part.
So does White.
Yeah, so is White. Legally, they have to have been a resident of Oregon for 3 years voting here before they register to vote. And so that needs to be answered. That needs to be looked into to answer that question. And no one has. So that's one thing we've got going. The other thing is Tina Kotek, who is like Kate Brown on acid, to tell you the truth, and her own party. They're not following these folks. And so they are so disenfranchised that I believe they will come this way. I'm getting donations from lifelong Democrats. I'm getting lifelong Democrats at this point coming to my events, if that tells you anything, and they're re-registering. So we also have a senator, Betsy Johnson, who is coming in. She can't come in at the primary because she's completely dropping her party affiliation. She'll be a non-affiliated voter. I know people say independent, but that's not quite where things are. And she'll be coming in by petition straight into the general election. But she's also been a lifelong Democrat who votes the majority of the time very far to the left. And her tactic is to split off votes for Republicans and Democrats both. So it's very interesting. We've never seen that before either. So I am thinking, and everyone's thinking at this point, that she's going to take more votes off the Democrat side than the Republican. So all of those things combined are very positive. So.
Is there anyone else who has any questions?
I do. You had mentioned your opponent in the Republican Party did this for governor as well, how he wants to federally turn the police force into, federal police officers. What is your take on that, for one? And two, how are you going to make sure that your police force, our police force here in Newton County and the sheriff's department have the backing that they need?
That's, I think, several questions all rolled into one there. So I am completely against federalizing the police. I think the last year and a half have shown us that our conservative Republican governors are the lions of the gate when it comes to preserving our liberties. And we're a sovereign state. We're constitutionally set up to be a sovereign state. And we need to listen to that and act like a sovereign state. We don't toss over our power to Biden and Garland of all people to prosecute. You think they're going to do that in Portland? Or for all of the cartels that we have running drugs and humans up across the Oregon border to the south? And that's absolutely insane. So I'm completely against that. As far as our local sheriffs, and that comes from a county budget typically. And, sheriff is an elected official. And so a governor has no business whatsoever telling the sheriff how he's going to do his job. So if we're coming in with extra funding for a sheriff's office from the state, in my mind, it had better come with no strings attached from the state. So I'm not quite sure how that would work at this point, but yeah. Also in terms of budgeting, the governor works with the agencies. So OSP, for example, would put forth their recommendation for their own budget. And then the governor would work with that budget and put forth a recommended biennial budget to the legislature. So that's how it works. If you hear a candidate saying, I can do this, and the other thing was triple the size of the state police, that was what another candidate said. It's not possible with the way the budget is structured that way. So, yeah, within reason. More questions?
Yeah, Carrie, my name's Grant Darrow. I'm the Union County captain for Move Oregon's border. And as you're aware, Union County is one of 8 counties where the majority of people have voted to engage in this conversation. Do you support that?
I would first prefer to get an Eastern Oregon governor in Salem so you wouldn't want to flee the state. Yes, I mean, that's my first. I mean, if things weren't going downhill the way you're seeing them going downhill, I imagine you probably wouldn't have started this in the first place. So that's what I would like to see as a solution first. So this is our chance. Questions are gone.
I'm a student here at EOU, and so in Oregon, there's a lot of tribes, and I was wondering what your plans or your goals to help the indigenous people of Oregon, because I feel like they're under, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Probably have to narrow that down for me, help them in which way. Can you specify or just kind of in general?
Just in general, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, they're affected by a lot of the same things that we are too. And I've had several individuals from different tribes that have been step forward and talk to me. And the one thing they keep telling me is, how do we get back control of our own tribes? They feel like left-wing monies have come in and purchased up the value system of their tribes. And I'm hearing this all over the state. So that's an interesting perspective to have. I haven't had thought of that. So, and I'm not sure what the solution to that is, honestly, but I do know that the Democrat Party before is funding into that to buy votes, essentially, and then freedoms are lost. So they're saying that some of their ways are lost. So we need to look at that. In the back.
Can I ask what your position is on the wolf management plan, in the state of Oregon? I know they say everybody has to managers that, but we have to not. They struggle with ranchers.
Yes,
Slowly.
yeah, well, we're a lot of cattle ranch, so you kind of know where the answer's gonna be on this. But I do have another Republican competitor who's a wolf conservationist, which is interesting, so you don't want to look at that too. But yeah, so the wolves were not, I don't think, technically introduced into Oregon. They were introduced outside in other states. And of course, wolves do not hold still. They wander quite a ways. And that's what happened. These are non-native species that should not be here. They're much larger, twice the size of what they should be. And they're decimating cattle herds and sheep and other things. And the compensation program coming back is pennies on the dollar for what these ranchers are losing. You know, I get it, and the wolves are not just where the maps say that the wolves are, they are absolutely everywhere across the state. So this shouldn't have happened in the first place, but it did, you know. We've had I think a kill order issued over in Baker County to wipe out several members of a pack over there who were wiping out cattle, so, yeah, that's where I stand on it. More questions?
There's a federal thing that I was reading the other day that they're trying to get passed. That it was like $2,500 per sheep, up to $4,500 per cow on that new green thing, and it's in that $1 trillion bill that they're trying to pass through. That's one of the things that's in there. Do you guys know anything about
Are
that?
you talking about them buying them so that you don't raise them anymore because they're ruining the environment, or what's?
No, it said that they were going, the green thing was they would charge the farmer per animal. It was $2,500 for sheep and $3,500 for something else, I can't remember, and $4,500 per cow. So they were showing that, you know, like, that's not, the farmer can't pay that. So that's gonna go to us. And they were looking at like, you buy a hamburger, even if it was $4 a pound right now, it's gonna be $12 or $13 if this goes through. Because it's gotta go to somebody. And I was wondering if you'd heard.
Number one, there's a lot of unknown things in that bill that
Exactly.
nobody probably knows. I mean, not even probably, but the people that voted for it don't even know what else is. Well, although some of them I'm sure do.
Yeah.
As a cattle rancher, I can only speak for myself. I'm pretty sure I speak for most people in agriculture, that we do care about the environment. We live things in the environment. So, you know, they're trying to divide us, like, you know, the environmentalists over here and the farmers and ranchers, and that is absolutely not true. We are environmentalists. We do care about the environment. We, of course, through the years, from 100 years ago to now, practices have changed. As we've learned, same thing with forest management. We don't log like we used to 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Certainly, we're not perfect, but we're getting better all the time, and we do care about the environment. But yes, there's a lot of stuff that is hidden in there that we don't know about, and when those things come up, we will certainly fight on the county level, and I'm sure we can hopefully be fighting on the state level. And as far as stewardship of the land and our natural resources, bringing it back locally is the best possible place for it. We're the ones who lose our jobs if our ranches go under. We mismanage things. It's crazy. Joe, another comment. Yeah, that's another situation where one size doesn't fit all. And even if it's forest management, a forest on the, you know, down on the coast, you're not going to manage it the same way you're going to manage it here. Or even there could be a forest in Baker County that you would manage the same. So that's where you do not do those blanket things, and you don't do something blanket on cattle and or any kind of animals. That's where you're right. Local people need to be making those decisions, and that the local people do care about where they live. Back corner.
If it becomes a parent level, you should do the vaccine mandates and vaccine.
They will go away if they're still there.
Anything that can be put in with an executive order can be undone very easily with an executive order. So, and the other part of that is some of these rules have been put in place, I believe, bypassing our representative republic here. Because what's happened is she has placed all of these individuals on boards and commissions. So the governor can place people on over 250 boards and commissions. And when they get onto these boards, they're passing OARs, that's Oregon Administrative Rules. They're rules, they are not legislation. And they're actually bypassing the laws that have been put in through our legislators. So how does that happen? That's a sore spot for me, because I don't think that that should happen the way it's being used. And so everything you're seeing with OHA and OSHA, that's what that is. So that needs to stop. And I could remove the people on those boards and get qualified people in, actually. the folks that are making these decisions at a state level for us are not qualified, in my opinion. We have someone who has an economics degree. We have a paper pusher from Southern California. We don't have anyone who's been dealing with mental health issues professionally, making these decisions and advising Kate Brown. So those are a few things we could do.
Your question wasn't for me, but I am not against vaccines and masks. I just believe in medical freedom. I believe each person needs to decide for themselves.
Yeah.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, the White and Murphy are proposing some river or stream recreation projects similar to what they did down in Hawaii, where the federal government came in and bought ranches and stuff, and they turned it into BLM. I mean, if you go down to on the Hawaii, there's BLM houses that the federal government owns and the BLM people use. Normal citizens can't use. They want to do it on Five Points Creek and several other, I'm sure you know about.
We talked about that before you guys came in.
Oh,
The
okay.
river democracy.
Sorry.
She was just mentioning that, the RDA Rivers Democracy.
Yeah, so if you watch the video, we talked about that for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the part about that that is so disturbing is it creates a situation of eminent domain on private property without any kind of payment. And these folks, if your property is adjacent to any of these identified areas, the government can then come in and essentially take your grazing, your service rights, your mineral rights away from your water rights. And there's no compensation for it. I don't see how that happens in America.
Because I've never dealt with this before, I always try to do my homework so I actually might know what I'm talking about. And the thing is, with the River Democracy Act, number one, they didn't do any studies. They just let people nominate it. You know, they added things that weren't even rivers. But on top of that, I do have letters from people that are adjacent to wild and scenic rivers. And where we're being told that it won't affect private land, they're telling me this is what happened to me, this is what's happening to me. So we have actual facts that it does affect adjacent land on top of more government control of lands that in some cases don't need any protection at all. They're doing fine. But if you think something needs protected, show us, do the studies, let us be at the table, and certainly we're all smart enough to help you decide what in our area might need to be protected.
And this may seem like a silly question, but I don't watch mainstream news anymore at all. So, yeah. So I know that the defunding of the police in Portland has caused a very high increase in crime. What are this? I mean, there are police in Portland that are, I mean, how many do they have, or, you know, a percentage of what they have? And what's the crime rate in Portland right now?
Crime rate in Portland has actually gone through the roof. They've set a record this year on, I think, murders and shootings. So, and police, they're down to, I think, a fraction of what they should be. We at one point had the folks, the special ops team basically with the Portland Police Bureau that would respond to riots walk out of that capacity. They've still hired police officers there, but they're not responding that way. And it's because when they got there, they weren't really allowed to do their jobs. If you're not allowed to go in there and arrest these folks or react and protect yourself the way they should, why respond, right? And it's a political game. They're being used as political pawns, and everything they do has to be politically correct. What they should be doing is being allowed to fight crime and make these arrests. There was an incident down on the Portland waterfront where it was a prayer group sitting there praying, and they had young children with them. And they were attacked by Antifa, rocks, bricks thrown at them, and there was zero police response.
Oh my goodness.
So they knew that with the DA they have in place in Multnomah County, if they made the arrests and brought those folks back, they would have turned right back out on the streets with no prosecution. And that's why I mentioned the prosecutorial aspect of that, because that could have been handled in a different way through the governor's office when that DA was neglected. Did I get all the answers in there? Or did I miss
Oh,
one?
we did, yeah,
Okay, sure.
thank you.
Thought maybe I missed one.
Thanks, thank you.
Will there be a Republican candidate debate that we might all see before the primary?
Yes, there should be. We've had several forums across the state that have been live streamed. And I think the most we've had are 5 or 6 candidates, answering the same question as a forum. We had one event where it was billed as a debate, where there was a few little debate elements tossed in there. But there should be some that are either televised or live streamed with all of us, I think, already. Alex is sitting here raising his hand. He's the chair of the Union County Republicans. And so, yeah, here there's something in the works. Get more details yet? Or?
Yeah, so I'm the secretary of the Oregon Republican Party's Gubernatorial Debate Planning Committee. We are planning 3 debates next spring before the primary happens. They're going to be one in Medford, one in Salem, and one in Portland. And we're still working with candidates to figure out some of those details, but you will be able to see these on TV and online.
You know what channel yet?
Not yet, we're still working with that. It's going to be a different one in each market.
Sounds good. Thank you. More questions? Here first.
I just wanted to know what your viewpoints were on the new graduation requirement bans regarding not having to show proof of basic math and reading skills to graduate.
This statement that was made from the governor's office was essentially that minorities could not do well, and so we need to lower the standards. And I think that is the most insanely insulting thing someone could say, because that is not true of anyone in any minority that I know. I know very bright, accomplished people, and they are certainly capable of high achievements. So I don't see what possible good could come from stripping away those requirements. We don't want to dumb down society. We want people rising up and having great educations and great careers after that. I mean, could you imagine, laying there and wondering if your surgeon has been educated, or walking into a courtroom and wondering what your lawyer's been trained in? That's crazy. Next. Saw several hands last there.
Cool. So if elected governor, how would you plan to work with the Democrats in the House and Senate who have majorities, if not super majorities, and can really dictate how legislation works? What's your plan to work?
There are several parts of that. And the first thing is we're going to have a domino effect if we get a good conservative Republican governor, because we're going to pick up some of those seats, and we know it. So that super majority should go away, I would assume. Second part of that is there will be certain times where you need to talk and negotiate, be fairly reasonable. But the last part of that is we have a check and balance system. We have 3 branches of government that are supposed to offset each other. It's not my job to go in there and say, yes, I agree, I'm going along to get along. That's not what I'm being elected to do. And I would be letting down the people who voted for me if I went in there and gave up my values and agreed with values that I don't agree with. So I'm going to be vetoing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I guess I'm thinking about piggybacking on that question. So you're in a weird situation now with the split council in Baker. And on the one hand, you're a principal, but on the other hand, nothing's happening because it keeps being a 3-3 vote and nothing moves. It just keeps falling at 3-3 the last few months. Anyway. So do you view council now as like an exercise? Sort of microcosm to practice those skills, or are you okay with the 3-3 thing? Do you think the city's being served? I just wonder if you view the current situation as sort of priming for what you would make sense in.
Okay, so the current situation, I need to clarify, that's not quite as it was framed here. We had, for health reasons, one of our city councilors resign. We typically have 7, so that brought us down to 6. We ended up with 4 applicants. 2 of the applicants had no support from council. 2 of the applicants were strong and had divided support. So we ended up with 3 people really liking one candidate and 3 really liking another. And that's just kind of a hung jury that way, right? And so that was a stalemate until the next meeting. At the next meeting, we agreed on a new candidate that had applied and voted for that individual. We were completely behind him. And then he resigned before he even could take the oath of office because of time constraints. So that was a big disappointment. But I've heard the allegation before somehow that this has gone on for many, many months, and it hasn't. And I've heard the allegation that we are not getting business done at a city level, and that's also not true. I think we've had one vote in the last 2 months where we were tied. So the business of the city is getting absolutely done as far as approving contracts, water, wastewater, infrastructure.
I have a question about homelessness, because you expressed that it's an issue, obviously, with the pandemic throughout the state. So how do you plan on solving the homeless issue without using socialist programs? Because most of those programs are socially funded. I mean, even sheriff's office is a socially funded program. So just curious how you plan to, I see the sign behind you that says socialism sucks. So I'm just curious how you plan to go forward on solving the homeless problem. Oregon does have a homeless problem without using those programs.
It has a severe homeless program that's, like, as I said before, created by failed legislation for the most part, because our local police, our local cities are not allowed to handle that. So something needs to be addressed there. If that could happen and we can handle things locally, then if you look at the homeless situation, you can divide it by about 2/3 to 1/3. And about 1/3 of those folks are simply choosing that lifestyle. So to change that, the law, when it comes to dealing with them and letting our cities deal with those folks, would address that 1/3 who are just there because they're completely enabled. That brings us to the other 2/3 here. And we have addiction problems and mental health problems. And I am never going to be for big expanded government programs, but there's no way around it. And that would be a very good use of our tax dollars. The way I would envision it would be cutting wasteful spending in all kinds of areas out there and bringing that money that's just splattered and handling the homeless problem back into a concentrated individual approach. You know, I would like to see our veterans who are out on the street spoken to one-on-one and gotten into some kind of treatment program where they could get back on their feet if they wanted to.
So how would we fund those programs without socialism?
There's a difference between taxpayer-funded programs and pure outright socialism. Yeah, they're not the same. So right now, we have a representative republic where we have a budget that's funded out of taxpayer dollars. And we represent, we elect, we vote on people who represent our will and how it's supposed to work this way, on how that's supposed to be spent. That's not socialism. That's voters saying, I'm electing you because I like where you're going to spend things. So that's different from socialism, where and we waste so much in Oregon. You know, so much that could just be eliminated and brought back. I looked just at Kate Brown's staffing level. And I started counting the other day. We have 27 or 28 layers of people who advise her in different capacities. You have somebody to advise her for this county, or for this issue, or for this region. And you get down into the regional aspect of that, you've got 10 people. You've got an advisor, who's a senior advisor, and then you've got an advisor to the senior advisor, and then the advisor to the senior advisor has an advisor. And you start adding up at least $50,000 in salary. And then you double that with fringe, and then you times that by all of those folks, and you're into millions of dollars. I mean, there are things like that that you can pick out across the state that just aren't necessary. So, and then you look at our homeless problem, which is, it's not good for them. It's not good for us. You know, it's a sanitation problem. It's a public safety problem. Everyone's suffering, you know, including the homeless. And we can target that money a little bit better. So, okay, very background.
Yeah, so I have a 4-year-old, she'll be 5 in a year, so she'll be going to school pretty soon. Do you know if Oregon has kind of gotten the critical race theory and that kind of stuff? I imagine with Kate Brown, it's probably being pushed.
It is being pushed.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And I hear from kids and parents in different classrooms who are experiencing that.
In Eastern Oregon, or?
I haven't heard anything specifically over here.
Okay.
So, but critical race theory has actually been banned in, I think, more than half of the states in the United States at this point. And that can be banned with an executive order in the first week. It is exactly that simple.
Yeah, I do not want to be putting my kids in there.
No, critical race theory is divisive and it's racist and it has absolutely no part of our school system where it shouldn't. So, yeah, I on my list. Yes, ma'am.
I'll give you a break for just a minute. Thank you very much for coming, but I just have a question for you that will just give you a break.
Okay.
A question for Commissioner Belbridge. What is the commission's stand on B2H movement?
The commissioners are not taking a stand one way or the other. Before I became commissioner, the previous commissioners, which were none of us now, wrote a letter. Basically, this is a paraphrase, saying that they didn't want it to interfere with views of the city or that kind of thing. It was pretty basic, but there was no stance for it or against it. I don't take a stance one way or the other. I have certainly gone to meetings, listened to both sides, but I'm not taking a stance on B2H.
Question then for Carrie, and it kind of spins off of the gentleman that asked about critical race theory. A lot of the language that's coming out of Salem seems to talk about things needing to be presented in an equity, through an equity lens. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that particular word.
There is a huge difference between equality and equity. And these folks are saying that no matter what amount of effort you put into something, everyone needs to come out the same. That's socialism and communism. That's what that is. We need to start out with the same rights and the same freedoms. That's equality. And then we get out of it what we put into it. We reap what we sow. That's the American dream, right? I mean, I fully believe that God gives each of us a really distinct set of skills and gifts. And it's our purpose in life to find those and utilize them so we can do the greatest amount with our life, the greatest amount of good. And socialism and communism, when you start getting into the equity argument, you're taking that ability away. So, that's what I mean.
You might be happy to know, and some of the students may be happy to know that at the recent EOU Board of Trustees meeting, the language was more diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And that conveys a very different message about the principles and the values of the institution.
That's much better because, you know, I have walked side by side with folks, different races who have actually come to America and come here legally and gone through that process. I know someone from Japan and someone from Russia who came over here. And it is an absolutely beautiful process. That's what America is about. You come in here and then you take that oath and that pledge and you see someone's life change and they become Americans. That's beautiful. But when they come here illegally or we have this forced equality thing, that's a slap in the face to that entire system. It's a slap in the face to America. That's not what we're supposed to be about. So. Questions? Again.
Yeah. So as mayor and city council of Baker City, you enacted the Second Amendment sanctuary.
Yes.
Multiple city councils, including my own, thank you for that to start off with. How is that going to carry on when you're elected governor? How are you going to carry that on throughout the state?
Excellent question. And thank you too, by the way. So, city of Elgin over here. Yeah. But yeah, I am completely supportive of our Second Amendment rights. So I was actually involved in the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance that the Baker County Republicans drafted together as a group and put forth on the ballot in Baker County. And it passed 70-something%, I believe it was 2017. So as part of that process, and then with city council this year, we managed to get forth a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. So we have 2 layers on top of the Constitution and protection there. I would love to see something like that. We have the Constitution, the state Constitution already gives us those rights, but they're not being recognized at a state level the way they should. I would love to be able to pick and choose and get rid of legislation that infringes on those rights, but as governor, I can't. I do not have that authority or that ability. And I can't pretend or make those promises because I don't. But what I can do is veto anything that comes across my desk that tries to take more of those rights away. And that's something I would absolutely do. Alex.
So in Oregon, the governor is the superintendent of public instruction. Do you believe, instead of having a separate office like most states do you think the governor should continue to be that, or should we create the new office again?
Yeah, and it wasn't always that way, and I don't like it. So I wish it would go back to the way that it was with that. powers that the governor has taken on that I don't think should be there. I think the executive branch has grown and assumed too many power positions, you know, including the emergency clause that she's using again and again, keeps extending. So I would like to actually, if this happened while I was in office, I would be supporting limiting my own powers, because I think we need an actual constitution amendment or something like that as well. So to ratchet that back to a local level so that no future tyrant can do that again.
Could you explain just what's happened? I'm not sure I really understand exactly what this issue is.
Okay, explain that a little bit. Which issue?
What Alex referred to.
You want to repeat the question a little longer?
All right, in Oregon, the governor is the state superintendent of public instruction. Most states have a separate elected or appointed official in charge of our schools, but I think under John Kitzhofer, Oregon made the governor the superintendent of public instruction.
Wow. She handles an awful lot that I don't think she should, so that's the issue. Yes, sir.
So if you're voted as governor, you're going to be governor, not queen.
It'd be a nice change, wouldn't it? Yeah, monarchy must fall, right? Yeah, I don't like how things have gone. I've been on Zoom meetings with her, and there's an attitude there that she rules like a parent or a dictator, and all of us beneath her are little children that should obey her. And that grates on me. That's absolutely the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Feels like that out here too.
Yeah, well, it feels like it because it is.
Yeah.
Did you read, I don't know if you've heard about the census she's just commuted recently? Read those articles, it's that attitude exactly.
And it's beyond that, actually. She has, it's, the last time I saw the results from the FOIA request, it was over 1,000 she had turned loose onto the streets. And she used the COVID excuse because the jails were at diminished capacity. 1,000 criminals turned loose. And these are not just, you know, petty crimes and thefts and things like that. These are rapists and murderers that have been turned loose.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
an article that came out recently about it, if you have an opportunity, you really need to look at it.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
She's continuing to do that. And so you turn loose the criminals, you reduce the bed capacity, so we can't keep these folks in jail at a county level. Yeah, nice. And then you close the prisons too, so there seems to be an orchestrated play there. Back one.
Thank you. I was wondering what your stance is on the and would you change the way we vote in Oregon?
It's a two-part question. I am just old enough to remember actually going to the Wingfield Range with my parents and voting in person and how good that was. When that happened, people were invested and they had researched the candidate, they researched the issues, and we all felt like we were really part of a process together. I think the mail-in is divisive, and I think it lends itself to errors and to cheating a little more. But the thing is, the people voted it in. So it takes an initiative back on the ballot for people to vote that back out. That's how that has to happen. Second part, we don't have Dominion voting machines in Oregon. No, we don't. We have tally machines, and some of them actually have a software inside that's similar to the Dominion software. But this is where it starts to vary county by county as far as I can tell. And I know Baker County, for example, we have an excellent county clerk, and it's very solid. There's absolutely no internet connection. That whole port is dismantled. It will not physically work. And everything she does always makes sense. The election board county, that makes sense. We have an excellent group of poll watchers. And that's what everyone here can do, is sign up to be a poll watcher on election day. That helps. But I'm hearing horror stories in other counties, so that does make me wonder. So I think that needs looked at as well. Yes, sir.
Questions, kind of a roundabout one. Kate Brown has done a lot with this carbon tax and kind of tying us for state reporting to China. How would you go about dismantling and maybe lessening the impact of that carbon credit system that she wants to?
So the carbon credit, carbon tax, as you refer to it, it actually fell. It didn't pass through legislation. But what's happened since then is it's come back, and she's gone behind the scenes and she's busted that bill up into small little pieces. And she's appointed people to all of these boards and commissions. DEQ has a 5-person subcommittee, right? And these folks are piecing together, part of that, part cap and trade is what it is, cap and trade. And they pieced it together through another OAR, opened it up to public comments, which of course will be unheard, and then put in as an OAR. That's also something that can be reversed. That's something that's within the governor's power to replace people on that board or do away with certain boards and get those back out. So as long as it's done that way, I see hope. It's a lot easier than dealing with really bad legislation. Yeah, and it needs to be. That's what we can say. It's a business mode here. So, it is scary. It absolutely is. Background.
It's not a comment and a question, but my comment was, I worked at the hospital in New City, and I wanted to let you know that your interpretation of the vaccine mandate when you came out for public comment is spot on. And what was actually happening in the hospital. Second question is, and I don't know, Donna, you might have, I'm sure you will feel the same way that I feel on this, but is IP 13, have they got any traction to put that into legislation? Do we know where that's at?
I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, let's see, IP 13, the one that the initiative, the petition that author having signatures for, you touched on it earlier about any kind of wildlife hunting, or, we don't have to be able to harvest animals if they and then criminalize anything that happens outside of it.
Yeah, I don't know where it is in the legislature, but I do know that the Eastern Oregon counties wrote a letter opposing that, along with those representatives and senators that we talked about. So we will fight that to the end. I don't even really know how that got brought forward. I honestly don't.
So that's an initiative petition. And so some far left leaning environmental wackadoodles came up with this idea, and it basically makes it illegal to hunt and to fish and to farm and to ranch if you're using livestock of any kind. It's animal husbandry. That's illegal too. That would be a sex crime. It's true. I mean, you have to pick it up. So, but yeah, they gathered enough signatures the last I had heard to actually then begin the legal process of gathering the signatures to put it on the ballot. So that's what they're doing right now. They have a few months to do that. So they're still out there supposedly gathering signatures. So I hope it fails and they don't get enough people to put it on the ballot. So yeah, it's crazy.
So could you, for those of us who don't live in Baker County, tell us what her comment was about the vaccine mandates? I'm not sure how you phrase that.
It was in response to how the Kate Brown's last mandate came out, the executive order in October, or that would be coming into effect. It came out in August, and I think we had like 10 days to get the policies in order for when facilities were for healthcare workers and any capacity if we did not apply for an exemption or you did not vaccinate, you're terminated, and you also are you're not able to fund them because you're being terminated.
So Darcy, you said you appreciated her response.
Yes.
Is that correct? So
Yeah,
she
I
has-
don't know
much
about
more
that.
responsibility.
You were spot on for what we were actually told.
I'm trying to remember what my actual response was, but it was basically, I remember I had received a phone call from the president of the hospital that morning, and she probably regrets calling me after that. But it was to inform me as mayor that they were going to look at this policy. And then in Oregon, because of law, they couldn't forcibly vaccinate at certain things. It was kind of a dance there. But that they would be looking at how to adhere to the state mandates that were coming down in some way. And it made me very angry because these folks were on the front lines for the last year dealing with these patients. And they were heroes back then. And then all of a sudden, they're targeted like they are absolutely nothing. And they're told, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do right now, after being exposed for a year, then they're going to be terminated. And I was hearing from the folks at the hospital. And one of the interesting comments that I heard that I didn't put in that post was from a physical therapist in the area, who said she can't even get insurance to cover the specific upper body exercise that they use for a walker. 10 years it takes them to study that the mechanics of moving the muscles on a walker before insurance will cover it. And then all of a sudden, they're going to force a vaccination on them. And it was not even FDA approved when they were doing that. So they were absolutely outraged at the disparity there, which was one of the things I kept hearing. Yeah, it does make you get angry. And it just is infuriating. So I probably ranted a little bit in that post. Guess I was good. So,